The Paint Creek Trail turned 30 in 2013, but its story goes back a long way before the 1983 purchase of 10.5 miles of abandoned railroad that is now one of the busiest and most beloved linear parks in the state.
Well, in the 1960s, the United States Congress was actively concerned about all the railroad abandonments that were occurring across the country, and they realized that if these parcels were broken up, you'd never again be able to establish these long public corridors, and they had in mind future transportation use. But in the meantime, it was concluded that recreation trails would make a nice temporary use. In fact, in 1960, there had been a presidential commission on American outdoors, and they predicted a prairie fire of interest in trails and said that trails would be the parks of the 21st century.
Sure enough, a 1973 Oakland Township resident survey showed strong support for pathways and trails. Almost at the same time, Avon Township residents approved a millage to build bike paths. Trails and pathways really were the next big thing. Penn Central stopped running trains down the old Detroit Bay City branch line in the late 1970s, and it wasn't officially abandoned until 1977. But that didn't stop people from seeing the potential for something great. In 1974, the Oakland Township Park Commission held their first meeting to talk about possibly acquiring the Penn Central Railway section that ran through the township. The railway was interested in selling it in 1977, but was going through bankruptcy. It wasn't until 1978 that they were able to make a deal. Actually, eager would be a better term. Penn Central called Peggy on October 25, 1978, the day after they officially got out of bankruptcy.
So they said they would send a lawyer out from Philadelphia immediately to meet with us. And George Gogasian had been on the Parks Commission here. And George said, well, you know, if we meet there in Oakland Township, they may think we're a bunch of sort of unsophisticated rural rubes. So he said, why don't we meet down in my posh offices in Bloomfield Hills, and so we had arrived for the meeting. Well, instead of one lawyer arriving from Philadelphia representing the Penn Central, there were the three. Well, George whispered to me, always have one more lawyer than the other side. So he rushed out, suddenly rounded up two more attorneys from his law offices, so that we had four attorneys to their three at that meeting.
With official negotiations underway, the Oakland Township Park Commission met with Avon Township, the City of Rochester, and Orion Township to form the Paint Creek Trailways Commission.
We did stage a public meeting, and over 200 people came. And so there were a lot of questions and answers. The only original opposition that was expressed was by adjacent property owners who were fearful of, well, would trailway users stay on the trail, or would they trespass into our backyards? Would the trail become a route where robbers could come and break in our back doors and that sort of thing? And so all of those questions that were asked at that original public meeting, and we would often, and some of them were, well, what's been the experience in previously established trails? And we had to say sometimes we don't know, but we'll get the answers and we'll come back to you with the answers. And that was the point at which we hired Alice Tomboulian.
I was just out of the legislature. I served a term in the State House of Representatives, and was very involved with environmental legislation and issues, and had previously been a member of the Oakland Township Board, and again, very involved with our board decisions and environmental interests that we had on the board.
And she got on the phone and talked with the managers of all the trailways that had been previously established, like there were a lot out in Wisconsin and San Francisco Bay Area and the like. And she produced a report. That was, I think, a crucial tool to winning public support.
There were a number of people in Oakland Township already organized to do something important for the community. Same in Rochester Hills, Avon Township, people were organized around their trails. And in Orion Township, they were organizing to put together a safety path network, which the word safety path was new to us out here in a more rural area. So there were people looking.
The Paint Creek Trailways Commission was formed. Local officials and residents were on board. It was time to buy a trail.
This wonderful price of $450,000 was negotiated, lower than appraisals had shown, but appraisals were not using the proper comparable market data that John Macris brought forward.
They were using large commercial parcels or industrial parcels in Oakland County as comparables, which didn't have anything to do with our kind of linear occupancy and trail. And so it was a long battle with the state to have them agree that our arm's length transaction with Penn Central Realty constituted a fair market value because we created the market value.
The tack with Penn Central was a bit more straightforward and simple.
Well, with Penn Central, it was simply an argument that the communities couldn't afford more, that they had limited resources, that they were trying at that time to get funding from the state to assist in the purchase, and that hadn't, as I recall, hadn't been completed yet. And so we convinced them that a lower price would be more doable. And of course, being the first trail in Michigan, that made a huge difference because there wasn't any precedent for what trails were valued. Even in other communities around the nation, very few trails had been purchased yet from railroads.
We took that price of $450,000 and worked from that, prepared an application for funding to the Michigan Land Trust Fund, as it was called then. It's now called Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. And they approved a 50% grant. I remember going to present this grant proposal to a meeting of it must have been the Natural Resources Commission. And the chairman of that commission was a mighty force in conservation in the state of Michigan. His name was Tom Washington, and he had been the director of the Michigan United Conservation Clubs. That was a good piece of luck. It was a little scary to be talking to Tom Washington with our little sort of homemade map of what we wanted to do. But they did approve paying 50%, $225,000. So it was, at that point, going to happen.
On May 26, 1983, the Penn Central Detroit Bay City branch line, formerly the Michigan Central Detroit Bay City branch line, formerly the Detroit and Bay City Railroad, officially became the Paint Creek Trail. But the early days were not without challenges.
The trail, when we received it, was basically a linear stretch of flattened land with crushed rock
There'd been a lot of use by motorcycles.
It was a convenient place for people to drive in with trash.
Day and night, they were noisy. They were really disturbing the nearby homeowners.
People would build moguls to jump over with their motorcycles or motorbikes.
And they were having accidents. There was a case south of Rochester, which is now no longer part of the Paint Creek Trail, where the Clinton River had eroded through the railroad bed. Well, one night, a couple of Jeeps went roaring down there, unaware of this, plunged off into the Clinton River.
People were enjoying walking. They were trespassing too, but at least there was a safety issue.
And so, well, we built wooden barricades to stop them. Well, nearby campers in the state park took down the wooden barricades for the campfires. And then we tried mounds of dirt. And the motorcyclists just, oh, this is a playground to go leap. So one of the promises is by establishing a trail which was actively used, the active users would drive out these undesirable uses that had begun to occur.
Part of encouraging those good users was to surface the trail.
There was a question that had to be answered. The commission investigated paving materials, and I don't remember if we had public hearings, but we certainly solicited and heard public comment about feelings whether to use an asphalt pavement or a more rural, informal limestone fines pavement.
We knew that this limestone type paving had been used extensively on trails in Wisconsin, which had been previously established, and so we were able to talk with them there about the pros and cons. But I would say largely it was the sentiment expressed at public meetings. The public said, don't make the trail look like it's another paved motor vehicle use.
The width of the trail, that was even a point of contention. It was built to an 8-foot wide standard because that was the national standard at that time. Believe it or not, there were people who thought that was too wide, too urban, too much like a highway, and it should be 6 feet or 4 feet like a footpath. Well, we had to deal with that. It was unusually wide. It was not a sidewalk. It was a trail that would allow 2 bicycles in the opposite direction to pass each other safely.
In 1990, that work began, along with installing gates and boulders to control access. And sure enough, trail use, the right type of trail use, increased almost too much.
Actually, there was a period where after the Paint Creek Trail had been established, but there were not other trails in Oakland County, and we found that a lot of people were flocking from beyond the 4 local governments. And the trail was getting very crowded. And I remember there were times we'd come and, well, we need to get some more trails established so people could stay home and use the trails in their own hometown and not everybody have to flock over here to the Paint Creek Trail.
Today, nearly 12,000 miles of trails and pathways are scribbled across the state. 2,600 of those miles are rail trails, giving Michigan the most in the nation. And just like when you take your first steps down the trail from downtown Rochester and look north, there's no end in sight.
I think that as we have been able to connect other trails to and with the Paint Creek Trail, there are other users and from a further larger community, if you will, gravitating, or the fact that there is a network of other trails, such as the Pollyant and the Clinton River Trail, has put this whole system into a spotlight.
We've had a wonderful group of people who've been commissioners and chairpersons of the commission they get along well together. They value the type of trail that the founders of the trail envisioned, the natural aspects of the trail and the type of surfacing that's used, the respect they have for each other, the creation within a couple of years ago of the Friends of the Paint Creek Trail. All of these are positive signs that I hope will mean that the trail will continue in its present form. I mean, when the old adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it, well, I think that it really applies to something like the Paint Creek Trail.
The next 30 years promise more. More walks, more races, more fun, more fishing, more deep conversations, more inspiration, and most of all, more love for the quiet friend who has connected our communities since 1983.